A technique we've used, and we've copied it from direct mail, it's what we call in our office a copy mailing, but what we call it with email is a resend. So for this particular campaign, we had their Mother's Day appeal go out, and it raised $5,000 for City Meals on Wheels. A few days before Mother's Day, we sent it again with a resend, and it doubled it. This is a technique that I say you use very judiciously. You don't overuse it, because if you overuse it, the effectiveness goes away. But we use this several times a year for our clients' most prominent campaigns. So for instance, I showed you that year-end postcard earlier. This past year, we tested a new resend where we sent out an email on the 30th of December, and then we did a resend to the people who did not open it on the 31st. It lifted all our clients' year-end appeals by sometimes 20 to 30% from the prior year, with making sure that you got that message in their inbox, because people are so inundated at the last few days of the year with other emails and parties and events for New Year's Eve that you really do need to be a little bit more aggressive during that. My one caveat is making sure that you don't overuse the technique, because it does not work all the time. The only change we made between these two was the subject line. So the first one was a special Mother's Day gift, and the second one was a last-minute Mother's Day gift, because that went out a few days before Mother's Day. The email appeal, though, is exactly the same.
We've tested resends with a different sender also, say the name of the executive director versus the first time it had been the name of the organization.
Within the resend also, depending on the timing, so I said unopened, we also suppress people who priorly donated for the first appeal, so they don't get the same appeal again. You don't want to offend anyone who just gave, which is really easy online to do these days now, that you can just grab that list fast, and most email programs can suppress that. And we've done different ways of resend. Sometimes we'll decide that if someone clicked on a link, they'll get the resend and maybe get a different version of it. So there's different techniques.
Getting your outside envelope open is 90% of the battle. We have actually found that there is an element, or actually two elements of an email campaign that have really that are extraordinarily analogous to the outside envelope in traditional mail. The subject line and the sender line are such often overlooked elements of how successful you'll be, that so many groups we observe will focus on the copy and the creative and the design, and they'll forget that they're not going to get people into the email to see your message and to see your wonderful graphics if what they see is too clever, if it seems gimmicky, if it's coming from, sometimes it works if it comes from a name they don't recognize, but that usually doesn't work. So really focusing on how that email looks in someone's inbox and what they're seeing, and even to the point of kind of making sure you're very careful to pay attention to how many characters are in your subject line and your sender line, and make sure that they conform to what the typical recipient will be seeing. So Paul's going to, again, take you through some of our work and best practices.
With email, our recommendation is, if you got to test something every time you send something out. It really is simple to just construe a really simple test, and I'll show you a couple examples of ones that you can easily replicate. Subject line is definitely something that could be easily tested each time, and you can do various different ways. You can, if your list is not big enough, you can do a 50-50 split. If you have a really, really small list, then you do a series and test it several times. We've done that for some organizations, that, like some membership programs where we worked with, where they just had small lists of members that were expiring, so it wasn't the whole file, so we tried a series of tests in different ways. But really, you should try to test something every time you go out, because you just lift your response just a little bit, and it really makes some huge results. So here's an example of a subject line test that we did for Covenant House. One was quadruple your generosity. Another one was save 4 times as many lives, and the last one was have your gift go 4 times as far to save kids. Any guesses? Second one. So the second one was going right there. Save 4 times as many lives. The need really trumped all the other parts of it. And again, that was our thinking, but we wanted to double check that, because sometimes a matching gift really does get people excited. But again, it went back to the need. Here's another example of a subject line test. And there is 3 options here. Is Pets Alert, then Pets Alert, 173 puppy mill victims, and then 173 puppy mill victims. Any guesses? This one is a trick question. It depended on the segment. And one of the things actually to take away from this one is in email, you have to be segmenting it. Donors, non-donors, email signups, If you have an advocacy list, it really does change the result and how they view things. So for instance, the donors, Pets Alert, just plain and simple, because they actually were used to this email and it was branded to them for a very long time. But the prospect list, which opens their emails occasionally and is maybe not as committed to the donor list, went straight for the need part of it. So it really is just the point here is testing, but also segmentation. It's so important. A direct mail donor, just say a direct mail donor with an email address may respond differently than an online donor. We have tested days of weeks, different times of days. Pretty much days a week these days really don't make a difference anymore. The day of week, some people, you'll see the most email going out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Some people will send out emails Monday, Friday. We actually did have done a couple campaign tests on Saturday, which was the exact same results during the day of the week. We did a time of day test, and for one organization we worked with, the time of day did change it, but we're retesting it to make sure that holds up at another time of the year. But this particular test went out to everybody at the same time. This is a long versus short version. This particular one was that the organization we were working with wanted the long version, and we wanted to test the short version. What do you guys think won? Exactly. Brevity is probably the best thing online. I mean, people really don't have time to read emails and they scan them anyway, so we really want to make sure that you're not over inundating them with too much information. A message test. This is for the Smithsonian that we did. So there was two different messages here. This was an email that goes out to their membership before their membership lapses and before they actually are going to receive the land appeal. So what we did here was we wanted to see if a green message, almost pretty much saying that before we're going to send you a letter and pay that postage cost, would you like to renew your membership now, versus the idea of the altruism of staying connected with the Smithsonian and what your membership means. And so the green message had a 70% better response than the stay connected message. This one I mentioned earlier, and actually this was a fun one. As I showed you that earlier piece that had all the different asks on it, well, we wanted to add an additional ask at the signer because we feel like the people who read that entire email and get to the bottom really are going to feel inspired to give, and this is for a matching gift campaign. So we wanted to see if that extra donate now button hurt response. Did it turn people off, or did it lift the response? And so the results here were that it actually lifted the response dramatically, and a lot of people clicked on that Donate Now button. It's the people who made it to the end of the email and actually clicked on that, and we were really pleased with these results because the client was worried that it was too aggressive having it underneath the president's signature, and since then we've rolled out the nice Donate Now button at the bottom. With all these tests, I recommend that you really do need to test them within your own organization. Every donor file is different and responds differently, but these are just to give you some ideas of things you should be testing. The subject lines are pretty simple to test. Some of these other ones involve having multiple versions and design setups and they're a little bit more challenging. But at least each time you're going out, you can test your from line if it's the president or executive director versus your name of your organization. And Harry mentioned that earlier. That varies throughout the time of the year, but sometimes the brand recognition trumps the name unless you have a very visible president or executive director who's out there, and we'll see sometimes that will trump the brand. So really thinking about those particular pieces when you're doing an email campaign, and it really only takes a few extra minutes to set up some of these simple tests. The more complicated ones, I'd say that you really need to plan them out and think about what you're actually testing to make sure that they are statistically valid.
Nobody makes money on acquisition. Renewals are where the profit is. Paul mentioned already the importance of segmentation in email, and that's one of the many aspects of email, one of the many principles that does carry over from traditional direct mail, and the performance of individual segments, how the prospects do versus the donors, the warm prospects versus the cold prospects, and kind of the underlying principles of direct mail fundraising, kind of the way the process works, that your renewal mailings in traditional direct mail will, unless you really, really do a terrible job, will make money. If you're mailing to people who have given in the past, you'll make a profit. And the struggle, the investment is on building your list. And it's there too, it's the same you see when you look at the segments online in email, that the donor segments, the people who have given in the past, will perform extremely well, do exponentially better than people who have never given in the past. But that segues into one of the most fundamental differences between traditional direct mail and email. In traditional direct mail, there's a whole cottage industry of cold lists, of relatively high quality cold acquisition lists that are available on the market. There are list brokers, and you can go out there and you can rent a list, or you can exchange your own list, and you can reach out to sensible, logical prospects, and hopefully you'll get a decent enough response that it'll show your investment will pay off. There is almost nothing analogous in terms of email. I mean, there are many email lists available for rent, but there are virtually no high quality email lists available that you can go out and rent and build your email donor list in the same way you build your offline list. So it's a whole acquisition in email. Building your list is a whole distinct process using lots of tools and techniques. I heard someone say there's no silver bullet, but it's silver buckshot. It's sort of making lots of different things work together. Your website and search engine marketing and social media. And so Paul's going to take you through a number of the techniques that we've been able to use successfully for our clients.